Hey there everybody, this is Sean from the Dukes of Dice, and today I'm going to be giving my first impression of the Colonists Era 1. So the Colonists is this big monstrous game over here that is some logistics, some resource management, some spatial action selection, a little bit of engine build, a lot of engine building, and it's broken down into 4 different eras. And these eras build off each other, they get progressively more complex. Each era probably takes a little bit longer than the previous one. So what I'm actually going to be doing in a couple weeks is reviewing this game on the podcast with Travis from Low Player Count. Really looking forward to that. And so I don't want to get too much into my overall impressions of the game. But what I'm doing with Raquel is we're kind of going through and we're going to play an era at a time over the span of a couple nights. That way we're not going to be playing 10 hours at once. So what we're going to do here is we'll go to the table. I filmed my overview, my rules overview for Raquel, and hopefully you'll find that useful. Then we'll come back and I'll give you my thoughts. All right, so we're going to have the Colonists set up for 2 players, and there are 4 ages to the game, but this is just kind of the age 1 setup, or the era 1 setup, and we're just going to kind of go over the basics for that first era. So every era is broken up into 5 years. Each year is broken up into a summer phase and a winter phase. In each of these phases, players are going to take turns, 3 turns consecutively. So for example, if we're in summer, I'll take 3 turns, and then Raquel, you'll take 3 turns. Then we'll go to winter, and then we'll do some end of year stuff. So here's what the 3 turns looks like. You have your pawn. I just leave 1 here just so you remember which color you are. And you're able to enter the board for the first time on either of the markets, which are these 2 bigger hexes over here. Now you get 3 turns, which is a movement of 1. So you can go move, resolve the action, move, resolve the action, move, resolve the action.
Okay, so those are your 3 turns?
Those are your 3 turns. Alternatively, as one of your turns, from wherever you are on the board, you can choose to just teleport to any of the markets. So I could be here, and I can just, with 1 move, go there. All right, so in addition to the home area here, we also have the player boards. And this is how it's going to start at the beginning. You're going to have these 6 tools, 3 goods of your choice. We'll just have you set up with 3 wood there, 1 food that's in your warehouse, and then 2 farms that come complete with these green farm hands on them. Now, let's go over what some of these do. So if you move to this riverbank gorge or this one over here, it's going to provide you with 2 wood. So you would take your wood, and you have to have a spot for it. Right now, you have no spots for it. If you look underneath here, you can hold 3 goods. So you wouldn't be able to really do that right now, but that's what those spots do. So now let's say that you come over here. This is taking 2 wood and converting it to 1 lumber, so you're refining it. So now you would take these 2, pay them to the bank, and you get back 1 lumber, because now you have the spots available for that. Let's say you want some extra room. Well, you have the storage shed spot here. So this says pay 1 tool, which would be one of these, and then 2 wood. And if we go back to our starting scenario, so you pay that, and you can do this up to 3 times. That's why there's that 3x here. The other spots where there is no indicator means you can do it as much as you can afford to do it.
Okay.
So now you would place this storage shed, and you have room for 3 storage sheds. Now here's the deal. If you notice in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little green guy. And that means that if you want to use those extra 2 storage spaces, you have to have a worker, a green worker, over here.
Okay.
And you can do that as soon as you build a new building, whether it's a storage shed or any of the new buildings you're going to put down here. So some of the other things, the builder, which costs you 3 tools, 2 wood, and a clay, gives you a hunter's lodge. And the hunter's lodge can go on one of these spots down here. At the start of the game, you have access to all of these lighter spots here, not any of these darker on the outside. And again, this requires 1 green worker to activate. So if I put this here, this means that I'm going to get income at the end of a year. Not at the end of each phase, but at the end of the full year, and I'm going to get a food. If you want some more workers, you need a farm, a tool, and a wood. And as soon as you get a new farm, you'll place it, and then you'll place one of the green farmers from the supply on it. This builder over here, which gives you the forester's house, which is kind of like the hunting lodge, but this generates wood at the end of each year. There's also some card play. We have these decks of improvement cards. And so if you want to draw some, you would come over here. This gives you a victory points, a gold. Gold doesn't get spent on anything. It's merely your victory points for the end of the game. So this lets you get a victory point, and you get to draw 2 cards. You have a hand size of 6. If you want to play a card, you would use this symbol here that's the card with the down arrow. Okay. So going to the developer would give you 2 tools to add, and then you get to play one of the cards. And so these improvements, some of them are permanent improvements, and they have some cost here at the top, and they give you some sort of ongoing ability. Others are some sort of immediate effects. So for example, this one gives you an immediate building contract where you can turn a farm into an estate, and this one lets you convert resources. Some of them will just give you resources straight up, like this one will just give you 2 wood and 2 clay. I mentioned before that you can go to the market. When you go to the market, you're going to get to take one of these 3 actions on these market cards. These change every year, so it's something different. There's something at the top that lets you turn resources into points, or you can get resources. This one, for example, gives you 1 food and 1 clay. Or usually one time you could take a very specific building action. So that'll change up again from year to year. So there's 2 more initial building spots. There's the library, which is a new building that go down here, which will increase your ability to draw cards. You'll actually get to draw 4 and keep 2, whereas before you're drawing 2, keeping 1. There's also the diplomat. Now, the diplomat lets you build an embassy. And at the start of the game, there are 4 embassies from, I think, a total of 8. So it's different from every game. So we have the trader colony, the laborer colony, the envoy colony, and the lord colony. And you can only build level 1 in the first era. And they have a cost that's indicated here. So this costs 1 tool, 3 wood, and 2 clay. So what I'm able to do is if I want to build the lord colony, I would simply pay that cost, and then I can place this down. And now whatever ability this happens to have, I have that ability. And this one specifically says, whenever I go to a non-market space, instead of taking that action, I can just get one of these resources. Because the thing is, if you go to a space, you have to be able to take the action. And so like maybe you don't have room for the wood, that's fine. You still have to take the wood and then possibly discard it, or you could discard other things that you have. But let's say that you come here and you don't have the tools or the wood, well, then you're not allowed to go there. You have to take the action if you're going to move there. So this might be a nice option to let you pretty much go wherever you want and get some amount of resources. And then these will build upon each other in subsequent eras, but we're not concerned about that right now. Now, the other thing when moving is, let's say I want to move onto a space that someone else already is occupying. In that case, I have to pay the fee. The fee is 1 tool or 1 food, and then 1 building resource of my choice, and I pay it directly to the player. This fee will change from era to era. Now, at the end of both phases, or at the end of a year, what we're going to do is we're going to do production for every occupied building. So here you would get 2 wood. You don't have anyone here, so you wouldn't get the food. And so we take 2 wood from the supply, and we place it here. Now, here's something that's kind of important. Spending resources, they need to be readily available. So goods up here in your basic storage or in a storage shed are readily available. Things in your warehouse and other warehouse spots that you may develop from turn to turn are not accessible in the middle of an action. So let's say that instead of the food here, you had this wood here, and let's say this wasn't here. Now, you want to take an action that costs 4 wood. You have 4 wood, but you can't spend it as part of one action. What you can do is in one action spend 2 wood, then in between actions, move this up, and now take another action to spend 2 wood. So think of the storage stuff here as a little bit more liquid, whereas the warehouse, you can't really access it as easily in the middle of a round. As the game progresses, that balance is going to be a little difficult, but we'll see as we get there. The last space that I didn't really mention here is the head office, which gives you a clay, and if you're the last person to go there, you'll be first player in the next year. Whoever's the first player gets to place these 3 new tiles. They have to be adjacent to at least 2 other tiles, so I can't place it here, for example. And once these get placed, let's place them legally, we're going to get to see the next 3 tiles for the next year. And if you can see this, there are some new buildings that come out. So for example, there's the Hollow, which produces clay. There's the Factory, which increases the production for a bunch of your other buildings that are occupied. This is the part at the end of the year where you can redistribute workers if you want to. So let's say that I had built my farm after the hunting lodge. I can't place a worker as soon as I build that farm. But at the end of the year, I can now redistribute him. This is also where the sustenance would happen, where you have to feed our workers. However, that's not going to come into play until likely later in Era 1 and a lot more in Era 2. So if I do an Era 2 video, I'll talk more about feeding there. All right, so I think that's going to do it for an introduction to Era 1. At some point, like I said, we'll do an Era 2 video, but that's enough to kind of get going. You ready to play this?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So, Era 1 of the Colonists is complete, and Raquel really enjoyed her first play. I'm really enjoying this game. I'm not going to be spoiling too much by saying that prior to the podcast, but for the most part, this is pretty good. It feels kind of like an Uwe game, an Uwe Rosenberg game, but with some other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of Le Havre, it feels like, just in the sense of converting your resources over into other things to build things. And it has a completely different action selection mechanism, but it's still really strong. Era 1 is pretty simple. There's a lot of stuff that's just very straightforward. Collect some resources, make some initial upgrades to resources, build particular buildings that are going to give you more workers. There's not a whole lot of craziness. I think maybe the craziness comes in the embassies that you play with, because you can play kind of an Era 0 game without the embassies, just if you're trying to get a feel for the mechanics of the game. But the embassies, the different colonies, I think add a tremendous amount to the game here. So it's very different how you're choosing to play this game if you're just going to say, we're going to play one era or we're going to play a couple eras. Because if we were trying to win just now, then we both probably would have played this much differently. So for example, Raquel wound up with, I think, like 40 points, and I wound up with 25. But I wasn't playing to win that era. I was playing to build up for subsequent rounds. And I didn't talk about how you score in the rules overview, and I can just mention that briefly. Basically, all of the buildings that you build are worth a certain number of points. If you have green workers that are actually working, they're not just in their farms, but they're out deployed, they're worth 2 points. Eventually, the yellow workers and the red workers are going to be worth a lot more points. But we'll talk about that if I start to do some of those other videos. And then, of course, any of the points, the actual gold that you've collected, are going to be worth points at the end of the game as well, whenever you decide that end of the game needs to be. And I think that's the big takeaway here, is that you can craft this game how you want. If you want to play 10 hours, Era 1 through 4 in one sitting, go for it, by all means. I don't know that I'm necessarily interested in playing Era 1 by itself. It's interesting and it's fun, and it's probably along the same weight as, say, a Glass Road, which is fine. But knowing what's out there for the subsequent eras is pretty amazing. So I'm really excited to have Raquel kind of discover more of this game, as I've already discovered it. I actually played a really long game with Mariah and Matthew the other week. And so far, first impression, really strong. A lot more exciting stuff as you progress through the eras. So that's Age 1 or Era 1 of the Colonists. So if you'll be so kind as to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook. And of course, we have a weekly podcast. We'd love for you to join us there, or over at our Board Game Geek Guild, guild number 2008. Till next time, this is Sean, and I'll catch you later.